First up, we're tackling Section 23, the law's way of saying not so fast drug dealers, and by drug dealers I mean both the legitimate and the need to speak to your manager kind. This section is all about controlling the supply chain, who can import drugs, who can make them, and who can sell them. It's like a three-headed hydra of bureaucracy, but with the noble goal of keeping dangerous drugs off the streets and ensuring that the ones we do get are legit. Imagine a world without Section 23. Your local gas station could start selling experimental weight loss pills alongside beef jerky and motor oil. Your neighbor's cousin could whip up a batch of miracle cure in his bathtub. Chaos, I tell you. Thankfully, Section 23 exists to prevent that chaos. It sets strict standards for manufacturing facilities, requires licenses for importers and distributors, and generally makes sure that only qualified folks are handling the good stuff. It's the regulatory equivalent of a background check, and we're all safer for it. Next, let's talk about Section 24, the part of the law dedicated to battling those overly enthusiastic pharmaceutical commercials. You know, the ones soaring music, happy families, frolicking in fields, all while a soothing voice lists side effects that sound suspiciously like a medieval torture chamber. Section 24 exists to inject a little truth serum into those ads. It mandates that drug advertising be accurate, balanced, and not misleading. That means no more claiming your heartburn medication will cure male pattern baldness, or that your allergy pills will also make you win the lottery. This section also cracks down on off-label marketing, which is when a drug company promotes its product for uses beyond what it's actually approved for. It's like suggesting you use your toaster to iron your clothes. Technically possible, but probably not a great idea. Section 24 is essentially the consumer protection arm of drug regulation, ensuring that we're not being sold snake oil disguised as a miracle cure. It's a constant battle against creative marketing and exaggerated claims, but hey, someone's got to do it. Section 4, Section 25, drug sampling, free samples, not so fast. Remember those days when your doctor's office felt like a free buffet of pharmaceutical goodies? Here, try this new antidepressant, and how about some free samples of this sleep aid? Well, Section 25 is here to harsh your mellow and protect your health. This section deals with the distribution of drug samples, and let me tell you, it's stricter than a nightclub bouncer on New Year's Eve. The idea behind regulating drug samples is simple. Free stuff can be tempting, even if it's prescription medication. Without proper controls, samples could end up in the wrong hands, leading to misuse, abuse, or even accidental poisoning. Section 25 lays down the law on who can receive samples, how they should be stored, and what kind of record keeping is required. It's all about accountability and making sure that those freebies are being used responsibly and not just fueling the next season of Breaking Bad. Section 5, Section 26, labeling and printing, what's in a name and a label. You know that little piece of paper that comes with your medication, the one you usually toss aside without a second thought? Well, that's a drug label, and it's governed by Section 26, the detail-oriented cousin of drug regulations. This section may seem boring, but it's actually incredibly important. It dictates everything that needs to be included on a drug label, from the obvious stuff like the drug's name and dosage, to the less exciting but crucial information like warnings, side effects, and storage instructions. The goal of Section 26 is transparency. It ensures that consumers, that's us, have all the information we need to make informed decisions about our health. It's like a nutritional label for your medication, but instead of calories and fat content, it tells you about potential interactions with grapefruit juice and whether you should avoid operating heavy machinery. Section 6, Section 27, penalties for violations. You don't want to test this. We've talked about the rules, but what happens when someone breaks them? Well, that's where Section 27 comes in, and let me tell you, it's not messing around. This section outlines the penalties for violating the various drug regulations we've discussed. We're talking hefty fines, imprisonment, or a delightful combination of both. Think of it as the legal equivalent of a stern talking to, except the talking to involves a judge, a gavel, and possibly a jumpsuit that matches your new roommate's. The severity of the punishment depends on the nature of the violation. Did you accidentally forget to include a warning label on your batch of herbal supplements? probably just a fine. Did you knowingly manufacture and distribute counterfeit medication that sent dozens of people to the hospital?
Let's start with Section 32. This section is all about what happens when someone's caught breaking drug laws. Think of it like a legal playbook outlining different pleas guilty, not guilty, or the ever-popular "my dog ate my lab report." Section 33 tackles customs. Turns out you can't just waltz across the border with a suitcase full of mystery pills. This section gives customs officers the power to seize dodgy drugs and ensures those miracle cures from overseas are actually legit. Now on to Section 34, which deals with companies behaving badly. If a corporation tries to pull a fast one, say selling sugar pills as painkillers, this section allows for holding them accountable. Finally, Section 35 adds a dash of public shaming. It allows for publishing the names of offenders, because nothing says deterrent like seeing your company's name plastered on a government watch list. Now let's move on to Sections 36 through 39, which are all about the powers that be and how things get decided in the world of drug regulation. Section 36 gives the government some wiggle room, allowing them to make exceptions to the rules in certain cases. Think of it as the get-out-of-jail-free card, but for drug regulations. Section 37 clarifies that the folks inspecting drug facilities aren't just random people off the street. They're designated public servants, which means they have the authority to do their jobs and enforce the law. Section 38 is all about protecting the good guys. It provides legal indemnity for those doing their jobs enforcing the Drug Act, so they can focus on catching the bad guys without worrying about frivolous lawsuits. Lastly, Section 39 deals with the finality of orders. Once a decision is made, it's pretty much set in stone, unless you want to navigate the legal system's appeals process, which, let's be honest, is about as fun as a root canal. Moving on to Sections 40 through 42, we are delving into the nitty-gritty of transparency, licenses, and what happens when things go wrong. Section 40 emphasizes transparency by allowing the publication of test results and analyses. This means that if a drug is found to be bunk, the public has the right to know. Section 41 gives the government the power to yank the licenses of companies or individuals who aren't playing by the rules. Think of it as the regulatory equivalent of getting kicked out of the sandbox for throwing sand. Finally, Section 42 deals with drug registrations. If a company tries to market a drug without proper registration, or if a drug is found to be unsafe, this section empowers authorities to step in and pull the plug. Chapter 5 wraps things up with Sections 43 through 45, outlining who calls the shots and how the Drug Act interacts with existing laws. Section 43 gives the federal government the power to set the ground rules, like deciding what constitutes a drug and setting national standards for safety and efficacy. Section 44 recognizes that provinces aren't just silent partners. They have the power to make their own rules too, as long as they don't clash with the feds. It's like a regulatory game of Tetris, where everyone needs to fit together without making a mess. Finally, Section 45 is the cleanup crew. It deals with repealing outdated laws and ensuring a smooth transition from the old rules to the new.